mark of the beast or the gift of uniqueness, a curse or a heritage of nature. Thick hair covering the body like the fur of an animal causes curiosity, fear, and admiration in people with hypertrichosis, a mysterious phenomenon called werewolf syndrome. Hypertrichosis has been known to mankind since ancient times. In medieval Europe, people with this condition were often possessed, sometimes with demons or even werewolves. They were subjected to exile, torture, and sometimes murder. At the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, bearded women were a very popular attraction in circuses and so-called freak shows. Often, the circus became everything for them: work, home, and even family. But, oddly enough, many bearded and even completely hairy women and men, despite their repulsive appearance, had a very good personal life. They started a family and were quite happy with their situation. Today, we will tell the story of the 5 most famous people who suffered from congenital hypertrichosis. Alice Elizabeth Doherty. On March 14, 1887, an unusual girl was born into an ordinary family from Minnesota. The baby's face was completely covered with short blonde hair. Gradually, as the girl grew, the hair became longer. If at the age of 5, the hair on Alice's face was no more than 5 inches, then in adolescence, its length was already 9 inches. Doctors explained to the worried parents that their child had congenital hypertrichosis. They were surprised because all the other children in the Doherty family were born quite normal. Realizing that their daughter's disease was incurable, the couple decided to turn misfortune into profit. Alice was still an infant when they began to show her to onlookers for money as a curiosity. There were plenty of people willing to gawk at the bearded girl, so money flowed into the family like a river. But this income seemed insufficient to Alice's parents. They decided to join a popular freak show that was just about to tour the large and small cities of the Midwest. During this trip, the girl was shown at fairs, in booths, and displayed in store windows to attract attention to the goods on display there. Many visitors approached her to pull the hair on her face and make sure that it was real. Gradually, she got used to the general excitement and stopped paying attention to the onlookers. Contemporaries noted that Alice Doherty was a sociable, inquisitive, and active child. She never had any particular complexes about her appearance, accepting it as a given. One of the journalists wrote that she was developed beyond her years. Another described Alice as a charming child with a pure soul. Alice herself never liked such a public way of earning money, but she continued to perform in order to financially support her family. She took the stage name Werewolf Girl. Over time, the nicknames Minnesota Werewolf and American Werewolf stuck to her forever. When Alice became a young woman, she had admirers who were not averse to having her as a wife. But why all this courtship never ended in marriage, history is silent. Compared to other circus performers, Alice was not wildly popular. This is because she was a very modest person, not spoiled by fame. She was looking forward to the opportunity to end her circus career. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Doherty family moved to Dallas, Texas, where they settled. Alice decided that she had enough money to live a normal, settled life with her parents, brothers, and sisters. In 1915, she retired, despite the entreaties of her family and friends, who were accustomed to living at her expense. On June 13, 1933, Alice died at the age of 46. The presumed cause of death was bronchial pneumonia. Priscilla Lauder, in her long and fruitful life, Mrs. Priscilla Lauder was known by many different names. First as the hairy little girl, then as the monkey girl, and finally as Priscilla Bejano, the devoted and loving wife of Emmett Bejano, who went down in the history of traveling circuses as the man with the crocodile skin. The incredibly shaggy Priscilla was born on April the 26th, 1911, in the Puerto Rican town of Bayamon, where tough boxers and drug dealers are usually born. As a bonus to hypertrichosis, the girl had 2 rows of teeth in her mouth, which made her quite charming and attractive to dentists and other scientific community. Priscilla's parents went to New York for a consultation with world-famous medical luminaries, and while the luminaries argued for 7 months, the girl's father had a smart idea: to show his daughter to the public for money. Priscilla's father was not greedy and spoke English very poorly. He was unable to promote his furry daughter on his own, so he turned to showman Karl Lauter, and just in time, because soon Priscilla's dad was shot in some drunken brawl, and Mr. Lauter adopted the girl, giving her his last name. Karl Lauter turned out to be a caring and loving stepfather, giving his stepdaughter not only a job, but also a good education. He really didn't like that viewers called Priscilla Monkey Girl, and anyone who called the little girl ugly risked getting punched in the face. However, the comparison with a monkey brought in income, so Lauter sent his adopted daughter on stage in the company of a trained chimpanzee named Josephine. Josephine had a charming stage habit of smoking cigarettes and spitting on. In the late 1930s, Priscilla met a colleague from the freak show, Emmett Bajano, who shocked people with his thick, non-sweating crocodile skin. He suffered from ichthyosis. An affair began between them. Crocodile Emmett was gentle and passionate. Monkey Priscilla was distinguished by her eloquence, as well as the ability to sing and dance very beautifully. In 1938, the unique people got married. A year later, they had a daughter, but alas, she lived only 4 months and died of pneumonia. Emmett and Priscilla performed in the circus as the strangest married couple in the world until the late 1950s. Then they hid from prying eyes and lived out the rest of their lives in Florida, in love and harmony. After Emmett's death in 1995, Priscilla shaved for the first time in her life. The monkey-faced old lady took part in several memoir television shows, winning the hearts of millions of viewers by singing her favorite song, The Long Road to Tipperary. Priscilla Lauter, the most famous bearded woman of the 20th century, died quietly in her sleep in February 2001, having lived almost 90 years of happiness. Barbara Ursuline, the Shaggy Maiden. In February 1629, in a German village near the city of Augsburg, another child was born to the large Ursuline family, the mother of many children. A respectable woman with an impeccable reputation fainted as soon as she looked at the newborn baby. Alas, the girl's face was completely covered with soft light fluff, as if the mother had given birth not to a human child, but to a kid. The midwife, having handed the child over to the mother, hurried away, whispering prayers under her breath. The very next day, rumors began to spread throughout the village that Ursuline had given birth to a little animal. The village gossips, who had long been haunted by the beauty and impeccable reputation of their neighbor, said that Ursuline had sinned with the devil himself, who appeared to her in the form of a goat. In those years, witch hunting was at its peak in Europe, so these rumors were mortally dangerous for the unfortunate woman. She might be burned at the stake at any moment. The Ursulines had to quickly move to Augsburg, where they had relatives. In a city where they had seen all sorts of people, interest in the girl, who, by the way, was given the name Barbara, was relatively harmless. People only laughed and were surprised. Seeing that their daughter was so popular, the parents began to show Barbara to onlookers for money. Soon, the family was able to climb out of poverty and buy their own house. Meanwhile, Barbara turned 25. The hair on her face had increased significantly. Soft, curly strands flowed across her forehead and cheeks. Cutting or shaving was useless. The hair grew back quickly, and at the same time it became darker and coarser. In the end, Barbara gave up all attempts to cleanse her face and let her hair grow as it wished. Hair is hair. But the Lord did not deprive the girl of her figure. The Augsburg girls with clear faces envied the curves of the shaggy maiden. In addition, Barbara was an incredibly smart, talented, and most importantly, cheerful girl. She mastered 2 foreign languages, learned to conduct small talk, and learned to play the harpsichord. Soon, the sin of her mother, as Barbara was still sometimes called, went on a long journey around Europe. Fräulein Ursularin visited Copenhagen, and in 1655, at the age of 26, she arrived in London. In the British capital, Barbara worked as a servant for a rich lady, and also played the harpsichord for the public. At one of the performances, the Dutchman Johann Michael van Beek saw the woman. Van Beek, to everyone's surprise, began to court the shaggy maiden, turned her head and married her. Johann Michael treated his wife with respect, did not mock her or beat her. However, almost from the first days of marriage, he began to show her to onlookers for money. Barbara gave birth to her husband a boy, and he was completely healthy, with a clean face without a single hair. Frau Ursularin, who had been subjected to ridicule and bullying since childhood, learned to treat them as manifestations of human weakness. Barbara pitied those who laughed at her and asked the Lord to return goodness to the hearts of these people. Unfortunately, historians do not know how Barbara Ursularin's life turned out after 1668. We also do not know what happened to her son. Su Kongtaijin. Su Kongtaijin was born in China in 1849. The boy suffered from hypertrichosis from birth. His family was very religious and superstitious. The parents believed that the child was possessed by a demon and took the boy to die in the forest. By a lucky chance, a monk traveling through the forest found the baby and took him to the Shaolin monastery. There, the child was raised by monks. He was taught martial arts, and it quickly became clear that the adopted child was not only exceptional in appearance, but also very gifted. One can only imagine how spectacular the training of the young man looked, who not only possessed the grace of an animal, but also looked like a young beast. He quickly became a favorite of many Shaolin masters, and as a result, each master passed on his knowledge to the young werewolf. The student greedily, like a sponge, absorbed knowledge and diligently mastered every technique shown to him. He was the first to master over 200 different hand-to-hand combat techniques and over 140 weapon systems. Among his skills was the semi-mythical Chai Ma technique, deadly touch. After several years of intensive training, he became the first great master of Shaolin Do. There are numerous eyewitness accounts of those who knew the master and saw him in reality. Tai Jin lived a long life, trained many masters, and proved that even serious differences from others will not be an obstacle if you firmly follow the path to achieving your goal. Adrian and Fyodor Evtikiev. Adrian Evtikiev once had a wife and 2 children, a boy and a girl, who died early soon after. But from the remaining memories, it is known that the girl may have had hypertrichosis. In 1873, Adrian attracted the attention of scientists from Moscow University, and then he went to Europe to perform, amaze the public, and earn money. Fate brought Adrian together with young Fyodor, another hairy native of Kostroma, when a certain entrepreneur invited them to perform together at a local fair. Introduced as father and son, the exotic duo became a hit. Adrian took Fyodor under his wing, gave him his last name, and became his adoptive father. In 1883, an unknown person invited Adrian and Fyodor to perform abroad. They quickly became stars of European freak shows, performing in Paris, Berlin, and other major venues. Adrian was known to be a diva, stipulating additional services in the contract, including, reportedly, sauerkraut and vodka. He died soon after from alcoholism. However, Fyodor, no longer Petrov but Evtikiev, continued to perform. Later, P.T. Barnum invited the teenager to his circus, which already had Siamese twins, bearded women, giant men, and many others. In addition, Barnum came up with a stage legend for the boy to further intrigue the audience. Fyodor was allegedly found by hunters in a dense Russian forest, where he and his hairy father lived in a hole like wild animals. According to the fictitious backstory, the wolf-like father rushed at the hunters and was shot, after which his son was taken to America. To complete the effect, Fyodor was forced to growl, bare his teeth, and even chew raw meat to the delight of the audience. According to those who knew Fyodor personally, he was in fact well-mannered, educated, and modest. He led a quiet life, learned English and German during his travels, and loved to read. After almost 20 years of success on the road, Fyodor became increasingly morose and homesick, but did not return to Russia. He died in 1904 in Greece due to pneumonia.